This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, your solution when you need a virtual server in the cloud. Use the code MacVoices2019 to take $20 off your first purchase at linode.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I thought it was about time we talked a little bit about iOS 13, about Macs, and the interaction between the two, since Catalina has changed kind of everything about the interaction between those two. And that kind of happened at a time when Gregorio Zanon of iMazing shared an article with me that is called iTunes Alternatives in a Post-Catalina Era. And so everything kind of fit together, and I wanted to have Greg on to talk a little bit about it. So, Greg, welcome. It's great to have you back on MacVoices. Appreciate you being here.
Hi, Chuck. Really nice to be back too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this article. I found this really interesting, not just because you addressed the very thing that I was thinking about, but also, of course, it talks a bit about iMazing and what it can do and how it fits into kind of the new world as we all transition over to Catalina. So I'm going to ask you to just start off by giving a quick background on iMazing and what it can do.
So yes, iMazing is one of these pieces of software which is often labeled iTunes Alternatives. And that label is actually a bit misleading because iMazing doesn't manage your music library. It's more of a tool to help you transfer data between the iOS device, whether it is an iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch, and the Mac or Windows computer. So we're part of this family of solutions which really aim to make it easier to move your data around locally. Apple has been shifting services and data towards the cloud more and more aggressively during the last 7 years now. iCloud was iOS 6, I believe. And suddenly the iCloud backup was enabled by default in it was iOS 5 was the beginning of iCloud. And in iOS 7, I think the iCloud backup was enabled by default. And then Apple Music happened and iCloud Photo Library, then iCloud Messages. You can see that every year they've been pushing more and more towards the cloud, and which is extremely convenient. It's amazing. It works when it works. It's perfect. Except that for many people, it's not the ideal solution for a number of reasons. Some of us may prefer to keep control of data, or some of us may want to do both, to have a lot of data on the cloud synced, but also to manage some kind of media or files manually, often because of size constraints, for instance. If you have to take with you a 5 gigabyte movie and you have to do it quickly and you're about to take the plane, well, it's really easy to just connect your phone to your computer and get the movie on there, and you don't have to worry about 5 gigabytes of data being downloaded via the 4G network, for example. So yeah, these iTunes alternatives, they're more helper software. And the goal of the article I shared with you was really to review the situation and say, a little state of the union, if you will, of what are the solutions in the market and what do people do with them. So it's not focused on iMazing, it's more broadly, why do people turn to third-party alternatives, and how do they use them, basically.
So I think it's fair to say that iMazing, though, is a leader in that space. I don't want to put anybody else's software down, and we're not talking about rankings here, but you guys are, if not the top of the heap, pretty close to it as far as doing this, because you've been able to.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I mean, you've been able to get around a number of the limitations and the things that Apple hasn't given us. You can help us take material off of our phones in a fashion and get them over to the Mac in a fashion that is not always possible, or definitely not easy, using the Apple tools. So, I was really intrigued when you showed me in the article, or when the article said, this is what people are using our software for. These are the kind of things that they're doing with it.
Yeah. So to be perfectly honest, there are other solutions out there with similar feature sets. iMazing is more advanced in some categories, such as backup and message extraction. We're really in the lead. Other categories will have some competitors with stronger features. iExplorer, who's the American leader in that segment, has an integrated media player, for example, but they haven't maintained the software that much lately. They're focused on other projects, but still they do a very good job with messages and with music. So we can't say that iMazing is the only solution to do. To do these kinds of transfers that the vanilla Apple ecosystem won't let you do out of the box. But yes, we are the leader now, depending on the metric you're looking at, in traffic and in Google Trends. If you just analyze how much interest there is for our products, we've been number one since roughly June in our segment. But it's more or less equivalent with 3 or 4 other players in the market. And so, back to what you were saying about how people use the software, I can share with you this graphic that we have on our blog post, so that we can maybe use this as a basis of discussion. So, can you see this now?
Got it.
Yeah. So this is just statistics taken from content on our website. What do people look at when they try to learn how to use iMazing, or they're trying to solve a problem? What are they going to look at? So it's backup and migration of data clearly is number one. That's in the middle here. And there's a really good reason for that. Is, for one, the backup solution we have is very strong, and two, the backup solution, the local backup solution, iTunes, and now Catalina's Finder offer has some very strange limitations. For instance, you cannot back up both to iCloud and locally. It's a binary choice, which is very strange and slightly dishonest, I find, because it's not true that you can't do both. You can very much do both. But the Finder will present it as a binary choice. You can only make a backup to your Mac or your PC if you disable the iCloud backup. How strange is that? It's I don't know if I like this approach of pushing you that aggressively towards the iCloud backup. Of course, the safest is to do both. If one goes wrong, you have the other. And the local backup has many advantages when it comes to data ownership. You can, parse the backup, you can extract data from it, you can migrate it to other services, which is much harder to do with an iCloud backup. So backup is very strong. So we have this iCloud limitation in iTunes and the Finder, and also this other strange limitation where you cannot back up to an external drive. So iOS backups are really huge, and people have drives which fill up very quickly. They need to make a local backup for whatever reason, and then the disk is full, and iTunes or the Finder doesn't offer any solution. So they Google how to back up to an external drive, and they find us. So that isn't very surprising that backup is number one.
I want to make sure I understood what you said about Catalina's native backup. That you said the Finder presents it as a binary choice.
Yes.
But can you do it both ways, or
with the Finder?
Not through the Finder at all.
No.
In other words, if I chose, okay, I'm going to back up my phone to the cloud, so I let it churn and back up, and then turn that off, and then try to do a backup to my drive. Will it allow that?
It will be a very strange experience. Let me show you. Wait. Yes, trying to back up both with iCloud and to the Mac can be a very strange experience with Catalina's Finder or with iTunes. It actually works the same way. So here you see my iPhone in Catalina's Finder, and under the backups section, you can either back up your most important data on your iPhone to iCloud, and notice that it says back up your most important data, not everything. or back up all the data on your iPhone to this Mac. And you can do both. So if I do this, now I've activated the iCloud backup, and I can't back up on the Mac. And now I've activated the local backup, and I can't back up to iCloud. It's really binary, which is very strange. And what I made you notice before, I wanted to draw your attention to this. The most important data to iCloud, or all your data on the iPhone, it's still quite misleading because you cannot back up all the data. The backup is built by iOS itself, and it won't include the music library. It won't include synced photo albums. There are many things that will not be included in the local backup. So even in the Finder, it's so complex the way it's structured that Apple will not just put a wall of text here, and that's perfectly understandable. But it's quite confusing. And then on iCloud, you have a bit less data because all the data that's already in the cloud synced will not be included in a backup, even an iCloud backup. So yeah, it's not easy. A backup is not a clone of the file system of the iPhone. So I'll just leave that there for now. I don't back up to iCloud with that phone. I should, I know. Okay. So yeah, that's a good example. But now, even if I do this and I launch iMazing, now I've enabled iCloud backup, and I see my iPhone, I can still take a local backup here. Nothing prevents me from taking a backup. This limitation is purely UI. It doesn't exist. Yeah, iOS is perfectly capable of doing both. Okay.
So you made one comment there about the backup through the Finder to the Mac, that it's not a complete backup. Even though it says backup all your data, it's not including certain things. Is iMazing including everything? Is it basically a clone of my phone?
No, it's not possible to do a clone of your phone because the file system is not exposed by iOS. So this just doesn't exist. The only way to do a perfect file system clone of the phone would be to jailbreak it and then to freeze the phone in a certain state by disabling all the sync services and then take a copy. And that's just not workable at all. So no, it isn't possible. And we have to rely on iOS's backup feature because it's the only way to get the data out of the phone and then to get it in a format that can be restored. There's no other way. If you find other backup solutions, which, for example, run on the phone itself, they are a total lie, in fact. All they do is back up contacts, photos, and calendar events, for instance. They cannot access messages. They cannot access Safari history. They cannot access call history. All sorts of data is just completely out of bounds. And they still try to brand themselves as backup solutions, but it's photos and contacts mainly.
Right. But now, maybe I used the wrong term. If I make a backup of my phone with iMazing, though, all of that material, the contacts, the messages, photos, everything is contained in that backup. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. Some data isn't contained, exactly the same as what would happen with an iTunes backup. So the basic rule of thumb is that it all depends on whether data was synced from a master library. Apple considers that if you synced content to your phone from a computer, then it doesn't need to be backed up, that data, because it's been synced, so it still exists on the computer somehow. So if you put music, sync it with iTunes, or now with the music app, or photos, sync a photo album locally without using the cloud, and then make a backup, these synced media, photos, videos will not be backed up.
Okay.
They can be extracted, though, which iTunes cannot do, but it's not in the backup. That you have to do it manually yourself. You can just extract the data.
Okay.
It's a difficult subject, because it's so complex. We have a few articles on it. It's very it's a bit mind-boggling that not everything is backed up, and the way it works is completely composite. So it's very hard to understand precisely what data is and is not included, and it also depends on the circumstances on which iCloud services you use and you don't. So it's a vast subject.
Well, it's something we've touched on before here, that you would think that syncing should be easy. Syncing is just, okay, I have this here and I put it there and then it propagates to everywhere. And it's not, especially when you're doing multiple devices. And if you're accessing information or have multiple users accessing that information, then you have conflicted copies and you have, okay, who gets priority over what and how fast does it transfer? And so syncing ends up being something that sounds simple, but is really kind of complex. And then to add to it, what you're talking about is then trying to say, okay, I have my phone in as it is right now at this moment, and I want a backup of all the information on that phone as I can access it on the phone. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's not, you can do it. It's just you have to jump through some hoops to do it because of the fact that some of the data is synced already up to iCloud.
Sure. The backup will actually not have priority over the iCloud data, and that's normal, because imagine a scenario where you would take a backup of your phone, and you have a note there that's a shared note, and then you restore the same backup 2 weeks later, but the shared note was modified by someone else or by yourself on another device. Then when you restore the backup, you don't want that state to propagate again and to override the changes that happened since. So the way it works, iCloud sync data has priority. Even if it is backed up, after the restore, the sync will happen and iCloud sync data will take over.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they always, the phrase is, the truth is in the cloud. And so the cloud is where it's housing everything. So the most I can do if I take an iMazing an iMazing file, restore it to my phone, it still is not necessarily going to stay the way, to your point, that note was 2 weeks ago. It's going to sync down and it's going to be updated.
Absolutely. If you have iCloud enabled, or if the note is in a synced account. So it really depends on the data, and it's an expected behavior as well, because you wouldn't expect suddenly an old node to overwrite newer content. The interesting aspect of restoring a local backup, even if the data is also in iCloud, is to prevent some very lengthy downloads. For instance, if you have iCloud Photo Library enabled, and you don't use the optimized storage, you keep all the data downloaded on the phone, then it's all there on the phone. It will all be there on a local backup. And when you transfer to a new phone, you will immediately have your entire photo library there. So if you want to watch a video of your grandchildren and it's long and in 4K, you won't have to wait 2 minutes for it to download again. It will be there on the phone already. So that's one of the examples where it does make a difference, even for iCloud synced content.
So, and some of this was happening under Mojave and earlier systems, but Catalina, I think everybody's sort of re-looking at things with Catalina because now all the syncing has moved over to the Finder as opposed to being within the old iTunes app. So we're all sort of learning all the new rules and the ways to look at it.
The rules haven't changed that much. It's actually more clear now, because everything that is cloud and services, Apple Music and podcasts, so storefront services cloud, it has been pushed to the music, podcasts, and the Books app also for audiobooks, and the third one, the TV app, of course. So the situation is more clear now. The Finder does the local stuff. But as you can see, the efforts Apple put in there isn't huge. It's not. I mean, it's basically taken what they had in iTunes and compacted it here. It doesn't look very amazing.
No, look, I understand. We've gone through a major transition, and not everything is going to be fully featured. It's going to be hopefully improved upon as we go along. But it seemed like the transition from iTunes over was such a major thing. You would have thought they would have maybe given it a little more attention and a little more time.
Mm.
But that said, I'm glad that we have iMazing to make it a bit easier for us all to understand and make sure we can at least get a copy of what we're looking for.
Sure. To be honest, I don't think that they're going to improve it much, the Finder, because it's very clear that the strategy is pushing everyone towards iCloud and services and subscription recurring revenue. Local data transfer has no potential for local revenue. Recurring revenue at all. So to me, it's quite clear that this is what we get for local sync. And you have other very strange limitations. For example, if you have iCloud for music library enabled, you cannot sync content locally at all. You just have a screen in the Finder saying, no, you can't add a track to your phone from your computer. Doesn't work. And there too, it's not really true. You actually can. So it's, Apple is really pushing. To be fair, if iCloud's music library is enabled, you could see some strange behavior by syncing content locally. iMazing still lets you do it. You can push just one song to your device, and it works absolutely fine. With playlists, it's problematic, so we block that feature. If you want to add to a playlist and you have iCloud Music Library enabled, we say, "Oh, sorry, we can't do that." But just adding tracks to your phone just works absolutely fine, and the Finder won't let you do it at all. When in fact, in iMazing, it's just one drag and drop of a song, and if you're at a friend's house and you're working on a mix or something, you just need to drag and drop a track to your phone to bring it home and play it on the way home. It takes just a second.
As you were talking, I realized that we're talking a lot about backups and restores and that kind of thing. But if I extract, and I'll make it up as I go, Greg. But if I back up my phone, if I pull an iMazing backup from 6 weeks ago, and say, you know what, I had this business plan, and I really liked the way it was 6 weeks ago, and now I've changed it, and I've completely screwed it up, and I really want to get that 6 weeks version back off my phone. Now, we'll leave Time Machine out of it on the Mac, so just go with it. So I'm able to go back into the iMazing backup and pull that particular file out. Is that correct?
Sure. Then it will depend on which app you have the business plan in. Is it a Note? Is it in the Pages app? Or you will have to look for it in the backup in its corresponding app, and then you locate the file and you just pull it out. Sure.
Okay.
And iMazing has maintains backup history. So by default, we keep just a month of backups. So 6 weeks, maybe that would be gone, but you can adjust that and keep more if you'd rather keep more. Sure.
Okay. And another thing you said that I want to make clear, because I know what I do, is I will archive my phone backups, but I don't keep them on my Mac. I'll move them off to, in my case, a Drobo, where I have a couple versions of my phone at any given moment that I can go back to, or at the very least extract information out of should I need to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's not a small thing, folks. I know I have a 1 terabyte drive and on my MacBook Pro, and I'm forever, trying to shuffle stuff off because I just never seem to have enough space. And then I pull out a 256 gig iPhone. Well, that's chewing up a whole lot of my space with even with the backups the way that the Finder generates them. So, and iMazing too. And so, with iMazing, I'm able to take that backup file, move it off, and recover that space, but still have the information.
Yeah, and all the versioning actually comes at very little extra disk use. The way it's optimized, we only store new files, so that even if you keep like 30 backups, you'll see maybe a 50% increase on the size of one backup. You will not see a backup that's 30 times the size.
How about some of the other issues? What do you hear from your users as to what they're doing with iMazing? And I know we just looked at the graphic, but what they're doing with iMazing and what they want to do with iMazing.
Mm-hmm. So we really have several categories. We mentioned before the ease of workflow, so just drag and drop something to the phone or from the phone back to the computer. That's ease of workflow. Some of it is actually impossible with vanilla tools, with Apple's vanilla tools. For example, extracting media from the phone isn't possible. You cannot, with iTunes, pull a song from the phone. So yeah, people turn to us when they need to do something that isn't possible. They Google it and they see that this software does it. Okay. Then the other big use case is legal. We talked about this, I think, last time. Legal use of messages. That's quite a big use case. And then it's just the data ownership, the feeling of, this is my data. I see it. I see the file system of the phone. It's the only way without jailbreaking that you can see. It's not the complete file system, but nearly. It's the backups file system represents a very, very large percentage of what really happens on the phone. So people like this. They like to know how's the data stored, in what formats, and then use iMazing to extract it in other formats, to pull your messages in CSV. Recently, we've had companies, a very big company, getting in touch about reminders. They want to extract reminders to Excel because they want them to import them in other applications, and that's perfectly valid. So yeah. Data ownership, I think, is a huge subject.
And it's funny that you describe it in terms that it makes absolute sense when we think about it, but so many of us just think, well, of course it's my data. It's my phone. Here it is, and you don't realize that maybe it can be difficult to get to that data or to extract it in a fashion that you want. You're kind of restricted by what the app gives you and what Apple gives you.
Sure. Of course, it's in their interest to keep you in their ecosystem. It doesn't go much further. But there are more and more projects nowadays to build bridges between formats and between services. There's a project called the Data Transfer Project, which is open source, and Apple is a contributor, Google is as well, but it's going very slowly. It's progressing, but it's far from ready yet. And the goal is not really to give you access to data, but to let you migrate it from Google to Apple, for instance. So you can't really migrate it from them to you. It's from one service to the other. We'll see how this evolves.
Well, and we all talk about the Apple ecosystem and why we like to live in it. And it, for my money, it's better than some of the other options out there. But at the same time, it comes with limitations, limitations imposed by Apple, limitations imposed by the privacy and security they're trying to give you, and to a large degree succeeding. But top to bottom, it's just as we said earlier, the whole syncing thing and cloud-based and all. It seems like it should be so easy, and it's really so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we're all huge Apple fans. At the office, I mean, we're an Apple-focused team, since day one. Our lead developer's developer name is MacMade, so that gives you the tone. But yeah, we also recognize that, yes, limitations are imposed by security reasons and privacy reasons, and Apple does that very well. There's another category of limitations which has more to do with retaining customers. And, it's not our position to judge whether it's fair game or not. That's not our role. Our role is to help users do what they can do. Whenever they face an issue, we want to, restitute a cleaner, a broader access to the data by any means we can, and that's what we do. And that's why, for now, people enjoy using iMazing.
And I like the way you put that, because at the end of the day, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Businesses everywhere, tech and non-tech, do things for that very reason. They want to keep you coming back. I mean, the credit card offers you get and the constant marketing emails you get from department stores or online merchants or whatever. I mean, that's all designed to keep you coming back and and using their service or buying from them or whatever. So I can't fault Apple completely for doing some of that, as long as it's giving me most of the capabilities. But I do love the fact that iMazing lets me go beyond that and do other things.
Sure.
Before we wrap up, I did want to ask you one thing, and that is, has the implementation of Catalina taken anything away from iMazing or made anything more difficult for you?
Not really. We're affected by all the permission prompts, just like any other app. There's even a prompt to authorize iMazing to notify you. And what's really funny is that the prompts comes in the form of a notification. So you get a notification that asks you for permission for iMazing Mini to give you notifications. Anyway, so we have all these notifications, the data access notifications, a notification if you want to access an external drive, a network drive, if you want to access the iTunes backups, all these are separate. So yeah, lots of permission prompts.
And I know that that's gotten a lot of press about, oh my God, this constant nagging about everything. And I think that it's a little unfair. I think we have to remember that as we're all transitioning to Catalina, launching those apps for the first time, or a lot of them for the first time, yeah, that's when you're going to have to give them permission or do that dance. But once you've done that, you're pretty much done. I mean, you've given the permission and that's it. So it's like any other first time through, it's going to take a little while as part of the transition process.
Yeah, but I think there's a bit of resentment because the way it's implemented is really like permission is asked at the very moment when it's the feature is needed, and then never again. And there's no centralized way to manage it. There's no API for developers to display a nice UI with all the permissions, and it can be done, but with a lot of work. I think Apple could have centralized everything, show you, every app and the permission you can grant it, the permission that it requests, and there's nothing like this so far. You have to go in the privacy window and search for every app in every single permission category. So it's They will do something, but
yeah, and I think you're right. I think they will do something. I also would almost be a little hesitant if I were Apple, at least at this point. I'm not sure I'd want to build that interface because I'm afraid people would say, "Oh, the heck with it, and just check everything for every app and just stop bothering me," and then basically make their computer a whole lot less secure.
Yeah. But the same applies to permission fatigue. Like you just click OK with all these dialogues, and when every app presents 8 system dialogues to request permission, it can it's I don't know. Many developers I've heard feel it would be nicer if at first launch Apple would present a single unified permission window for the app. This app wants to access this, that. Yes, no, boom. It will be a little bit cleaner.
Yeah. Well, maybe in the next version,
yes.
Hopefully somebody will see it. But yeah, it's interfacing people with computers, and then the bad guys are out there trying to do what they can. And so it's just the bad guys are making everything less convenient for the rest of us.
Of course. Yeah.
So bad guys, stop it, would you?
Sure, and I don't know if you've seen. Well, you can cut this afterwards. We've been talking hours. But did you see after after installing iOS 13, all the apps which require Bluetooth access, where they have no business whatsoever accessing your Bluetooth APIs, none, and it's only to track you, nothing else.
Yep.
It's mad. And suddenly they all had to come up of the bush. Why does Facebook need to access Bluetooth? It just doesn't. It's yeah.
And I'm not going to cut that because I think that's a completely valid point, and that's just a perfect example of why we're all having to go through some of this. Is that there are organizations out there, there are, I'm sorry to say, some developers that were taking advantage of things, and there were services that were trying to take advantage of it, and they really shouldn't. And so Apple's had to, if Apple wants to try to deliver what customers seem to want, and that's privacy and security, there's no other way to do it.
Sure.
So it's a tough world, and it makes it tougher for somebody like you and your team that are trying to develop a genuinely useful app. But yeah, I've been a little horrified at how many times, even an app that I give permission to track me, I now in iOS 13, I get those notifications. This app has tried to do so much in the last few days, and it's like, why? I haven't even launched it. What are you doing? So
sure.
Yeah.
But it is interesting, and it's reassuring that they are taking this strong stance. Then, of course, there are some UX kinks to iron out, but yeah, it is the right direction for sure.
So, Greg, tell us where folks can go to find out more about iMazing and all it can do, because I think it's really important. If you have an iPhone or iPad and you care about any of this stuff, iMazing is something you really want to look at.
It's very simple, iMazing.com, and you don't need to purchase a license before you just download the software. There's no registration, and you can just start backing up your iPhone without even registering. Then if you want to use the more advanced features, you can always get a license later. But why not start backing up now with iMazing?
And I forget about that because I've been an iMazing customer now for a while. That is such a great service you give to the community that, okay, I can do just what I said earlier. I can back up my phone. I can move that archive off and have it there should anything happen. But if you want to use all the great features, man, I would encourage you to please support iMazing, buy it, and learn what it can do for you, because it's a terrific utility. And I know how much I appreciate what you've done with it, Greg, you and your team.
Thank you very much, Chuck. That's much appreciated. Again.
Yeah, we'll do it again sometime. Thank you so much. And by all means, anytime you have anything to announce, more than welcome. I love learning more about what you're trying to do with iMazing.
We will. Next in line are photos. We have a very nice photos view coming up very soon.
Ooh,
that should please a lot of our users.
Great. Well, come back and tell us about it when the time comes.
With pleasure.
All right.
Folks, goodbye, Chuck.
Thank you. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. I hope you got something out of this. I really want you to pay attention to some of these things because your data is your data. And Greg brought up some really interesting points about ownership and, of course, backing up and access and syncing and all that. So please go check out iMazing, make a backup of your phone, and store it somewhere safe. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.